PSG are no longer the team that they used to be from last season, and today we are here to understand why that is the case. As neutrals or as fans of it, perhaps, depending on how you look at it, we keep hoping, perhaps against hope, that at some point this season they're going to burst into the kind of form that they were in last season. Well, it couldn't be any further from the truth because it hasn't happened. You have not seen the scintillating form that they were on, more particularly in the better part of the second part of last season, because we know that they had a slow start in the UEFA Champions League but grew in the competition, having to go through the playoffs before knocking out three Premier League sides in Liverpool, Aston Villa and Arsenal before reaching the finals of the UEFA Champions League, which they eventually won when they obliterated Inter Milan to win their first UEFA Champions League title. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another episode on your favorite football updates channel. It's always a pleasure to be back here, and I want to say thank you so much to all our new subscribers that have recently joined the community and all our usual suspects. Well, today we are here to explain why you have experienced or observed PSG a sort of meltdown in comparison to the high standards that they set for themselves last season. First of all, I'll begin with the reason of fatigue, or the point of fatigue. PSG have played one too many games without so much of a rest. We know that what was supposed to be a long summer under the sun of them basking on the beaches of Bali and perhaps chilling in the waters of the Maldives, that did not happen because quickly or shortly after the finals of the UEFA Champions League, in which they thrashed Inter Milan by 5-0, they had to prepare themselves to feature in the FIFA Club World Cup in the new expanded format that included 32 teams, a competition in which they played really well, beating the likes of Bayern Munich on their way to the final that they eventually lost by 3-0 to Chelsea there, with Cole Palmer scoring a brace as well as Joao Pedro on target there, Joao Neves getting himself a red card in that one, while Luis Enrique had some unsporting character at the tail end of that game. So, for me, I believe fatigue is one of those reasons. Some of their core players have had some injuries, others are not in the form that they had last season, or particularly because of fatigue. Because in the immediate aftermath of the FIFA Club World Cup, they only had about a fortnight's rest before their preparations kicked off for the new season. And indeed, when you look at that context or that scope of games that they've had to play all during that period of time up until this stage in the season, clearly it will be almost inhumane for us to assume or to expect that they will be hitting the same heights that they did last season. So for me, fatigue is a big factor in that one. You've had a drop of form in players like Achraf Hakimi, for whom injuries have also been part of that journey. He did suffer that bad injury following a dangerous tackle from Luis Diaz in their 2-1 defeat at the hands of Bayern Munich during the league phase of the UEFA Champions League. And while he was returning from injury, he then went to play in the Africa Cup of Nations with Morocco, a team that went all to the final. Also, of course, getting himself voted the best player of Africa, or the African Best Player of the Year 2025, and well deserved so, really. But this season, we've seen a drop off in his form from what he was last season. Last season, it wasn't up to debate that he was the best right back there was in the world, but this season, I do not think he could even make the top 3 at the moment. His counterpart at left back, Nuno Mendes, has equally had a drop in form. Injuries have not been an issue for him, but it's just that drop off in form as a result of playing so many games without so much of rest, as we have earlier on discussed. Marquinhos is far from the centre back he was last season. That's why on certain occasions you've seen Willian Pacho being played alongside Ilya Zabanyi, who they signed in the summer from AFC Bournemouth. Then they had a significant change in a player profile because they got themselves rid of their #1 goalkeeper, Gianluigi Donnarumma, who was quite instrumental in everything they did last season. Had it not been for Gianluigi Donnarumma, perhaps PSG would have not even made it to the finals of the UEFA Champions League. But part of the reason as to why they were there, Gianluigi Donnarumma was one of that. We do remember all his brilliant saves versus Arsenal in the semi-finals. We do remember his heroics during the round of 16 tie against Liverpool, as well as on the other side when they faced Aston Villa in the quarter-finals. So really, he was a key part of that squad, but they decided to part ways with him and he joined Manchester City, and they had him replaced by Lucas Chevalier from Lille. The 24-year-old French goalkeeper has not lived to the billing of the expectation in stepping into the big shoes of Gianluigi Donnarumma, and has since fallen down the pecking order to his number 2 in Matevei Safanov, the Russian goalkeeper. So for me, that has equally been an issue in as far as their player profile is concerned. Then, in the grand scheme of things, injuries have played a big part of that. That midfield trio that we are so accustomed to watching of Vitinha, Joao Neves and Fabian Ruiz, we've hardly seen it this season because Fabian Ruiz has been quite out through injury for quite some time, while Joao Neves has equally been sidelined during some moments of the season. And therefore, they've had to rely on players like Warren Zaire-Emery as well as Pedro Fernandes to chip in that midfield, who are not by a stretch of a mile, close to what you get from Joao Neves and Fabian Ruiz. So that has also contributed to their general drop-off in form in as far as this season. Then when it comes to their forward lines, injuries have not been any different a story because Ousmane Dembele and Desiree Doué have been in and out of that team through injury. Bradley Barcola has not hit the heights that you'd want him to hit, while Ivica Kvaratskhelia has equally scrapped for form in terms of consistency. So that's the PSG side that we're talking about. It's still the same manager in Luis Enrique, still the same squad. But when you look at the core team last season, because all throughout the second part of last season, or for the better part of last season, you could almost be woken up out of your sleep and predict what the starting 11 was going to be. That Gianluigi Donnarumma was going to be in goal. That Marquinhos was going to play alongside, Willian Pacho. That you had Achraf Hakimi at right back, a very electric player coming forward, defending really well, as well as Nuno Mendes at left back. That you had Vitinha, Joao Neves and Fabian Ruiz in that midfield, with Ousmane Dembele, Desiree Doué or Ivica Kvaratskhelia, with the only debate being whether is it Bradley Barcola or Desiree Doué. But oftentimes, the answer was simple because it was Desiree Doué that sometimes got the nod ahead, and we saw his performance, or tremendous performance, in the finals of the UEFA Champions League. So that has really, really been a factor. We've seen a team drop off in form because in their final 3 games of the UEFA Champions League at the league phase, out of the 9 points that you expected them to amass, they could only pick 2 points for a goalless draw away to San Mamés against a very poor Athletic Bilbao, and then they lost to Sporting Lisbon by 2-1, and a 1-1 draw against Newcastle, thanks to that goal from Vitinha and Joe Willock's equalizer in that game. So their performances have been sort of on and off. Last season, by the time we entered 2025, there were, I think, about 10 points clear at the summit of the French League 1 standings, and yet this season, as we speak, they are only 1 point against RC Lens. There, in the weekend, which was last week on Friday, they lost to AC Monaco by 3-1 in a very, very lacking performance. Magnus Akleocho, one of the goal scorers, as well as Alexander Govin and Florian Balogun scoring for Monaco, while Bradley Barcola picked up the pieces for what turned out to be a mere consolation for the PSG side, who have lost to Monaco home and away this season because they did lose the first leg in the French League 1 by 0-0, that goal scored by Takumi Minamino. And then when it came to the UEFA Champions League playoffs, they faced the same side, but 11-11, Monaco were the better side because they took a 2-0 lead in the first leg before PSG bounced back to win that fixture by 3-2. But Monaco had to be reduced to 10 men, just as it was the story in the reverse fixture that they shared, in which they shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw, with Koulibaly being the one sent off in that one. So really, majority of their performances have been wanting. When you look back at their 5-0 thumping of Olympique Marseille, you thought, well, the sleeping giant has finally woken up, that they are back to their absolute best. But that did not last because in the subsequent game, they went on and lost by 3-1 against Stade Rennes. So that is the PSG side that we are talking about this season. A combination of fatigue, injuries, and a change in playing staff in certain key departments either due to departure or injuries, have been quite significant in explaining their drop-off in form in as far as this season is concerned. So really, in the aftermath of that 3-1 loss to Monaco, I think in the match report written by L'Equipe, they said PSG are a team on the verge of crisis. That's how they described it. So really, whereas going into their game against Chelsea in the UEFA Champions League, they will be hyped up, plotting their revenge against a Chelsea side for whom they lost against 2 by 3 goals to nil in the FIFA Club World Cup finals. It does not give you much encouragement knowing the kind of form they've exhibited this season. Whereas they are still capable of thrashing any side they may meet, their lack of consistency throughout the season has sort of left us doubting whether they will even get past Chelsea over 2 legs, because in my opinion, Liam Rosenior, who is the current manager at Chelsea, formerly at Strasbourg, for which Strasbourg forced them in a 3-3 draw in the first leg, in the first League One this season when he was still in charge, knows them perhaps a little too well that he could mastermind their exit, early exit from the UEFA Champions League this season. But only time will tell whether we will live to see that, be the case. So, unless you have any other reason, do let me know down in the comment section as to why you think PSG have had this significant drop-off in form or standards based on the sort of high levels that they set for themselves last season, because they've been far down than it was. Like I said, they had a slow start to last season, grew up in the competitions, particularly the UEFA Champions League, because they had to go through the playoffs. I think they had to beat Brest in the playoff rounds, but either way, they managed to crawl their way to the finals quite convincingly and thrashed at Inter Milan there by 5 goals to nil. So let me know what your thoughts are about PSG and what you think explains further their drop-off in form this season. Allow me to leave it at that, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your time. Bye-bye for now.